Benin City, 1897. A West African kingdom older than the British Empire is on fire. British soldiers move through the royal palace, and everywhere they look there is astonishing art. Thousands of sculptures in brass and ivory, some of them centuries old. They take it, all of it. They burn the palace, send the king into exile, and ship the treasures back to Europe to be sold. Now come back to today. Those same sculptures, the Benin Bronzes, are among the most famous artworks on earth. And over the last few years, the museums of the world have quietly been sending them home, one country at a time. Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, even a university in England, all except one. The place holding the single biggest collection of them anywhere on the planet, around 900 pieces, is Britain. And a British law from 1963 says it may not be allowed to give them back. So today, what these treasures actually are, why they matter so much, how they were taken, and why Britain became the last one holding on. Let's get into it. So let's start with the obvious question. What actually are the Benin Bronzes? First, a quick untangling because the name confuses almost everyone. These have nothing to do with a modern country called Benin. They come from the Kingdom of Benin, an ancient African state that sat in what is now southern Nigeria. Different place, same name. For centuries, this kingdom was one of the most powerful in West Africa, a great world capital, a king called the Oba, and an artistic tradition that will stop you in your tracks. Because bronzes undersells them badly. There are thousands of objects, mostly cast in brass, some in bronze, others carved from ivory. Hundreds of flat plaques that once covered the pillars of the royal palace, each showing a scene, a king, a warrior, a ceremony, a moment of court life. Others are portrait heads of past rulers, so lifelike they seem about to speak. And here's the part that matters most. They were made using a method called lost wax casting. You sculpt your design in wax, encase it, melt the wax out, and pour molten metal into the space it leaves behind. It is fiendishly hard to do well. The Benin casters were doing it at the highest level in the world 500 years ago and more. Put the plaques together and you get something remarkable. A history book written in metal. A kingdom recording itself, its kings, its battles, its rituals, cast in brass, generation after generation. Now here's the detail I can't get past. When these works reached Europe in 1897, they were so refined that many Europeans flatly refused to believe Africans had made them. They reached for other explanations. Maybe the Portuguese made them. Maybe some lost civilization. Anyone but the Africans who were, at that very moment, being conquered on the grounds that they had no real civilization to speak of. Sit with that. The bronzes were living proof of a sophisticated, ancient, artistic society, and that proof was looted, scattered, and explained away by the very people doing the looting. To understand how that happened, we have to go back to the fire. By the 1890s, the Kingdom of Benin had been trading with Europeans for 400 years. Pepper, ivory, cloth. But now Britain was carving up Africa, and it wanted more than trade. It wanted control of Benin's land and its markets. And the Oba was in the way. In January 1897, a British official named James Phillips set out for Benin City with a small armed party to force a meeting with the Oba. There was a problem. The kingdom was in the middle of a sacred festival, a time when outsiders were forbidden to approach the king. Phillips was warned, more than once, to turn back. He kept going. On the road, his party was ambushed. Most of them were killed. And even here, the story is more tangled than it looks. By many accounts, the Oba himself did not order that attack. His war chiefs did, against his wishes, fearing he was about to be deposed. But that nuance didn't matter to Britain, because the ambush was exactly the excuse it had been waiting for. The response was overwhelming. In February 1897, around 1,200 British troops marched on Benin City with machine guns and naval artillery, weapons the kingdom's defenders simply had no answer to. Within days, the city fell. The soldiers stripped the palace of thousands of its treasures. They burned it, and they sent the Oba of Nramwen into exile, where he later died. And the looting wasn't an accident of war, it was the plan. British officers were authorized to take the art specifically to help cover the cost of the expedition. Much of it was auctioned off in Europe within months. That's how the bronzes scattered across the museums and drawing rooms of the Western world, as spoils sold to pay the bill for the very war that seized them. Within a year, they were on display in the British Museum, and there most of them have stayed ever since. Now you might assume nobody asked for them back until the last few trendy years. Not true. As early as the 1930s, the Royal Court of Benin was formally asking Britain to return them. For decade after decade, the answer was no, or silence. And then, very recently, something broke open. In 2022, Germany agreed to hand back ownership of well over 1,000 Benin objects. A London museum and an American one returned theirs. In 2025, the Netherlands sent back 119 bronzes in a single day, the largest return yet. In early 2026, the University of Cambridge in England transferred 116, and that summer, 3 Swiss museums handed back 18 more at a ceremony in Lagos. Piece by piece, museum by museum, the Benin Bronzes are going home. Nigeria is building a new museum in Benin City to receive them. After more than a century of being told no, the tide has properly turned. Which leaves one very large, very awkward question. If everyone else is starting to give them back, why isn't the place that has the most of them? The British Museum in London holds around 900 Benin Bronzes, the largest collection anywhere in the world, and its official position is that it cannot give them back. The reason is a law, the British Museum Act of 1963, which forbids the museum from permanently giving away objects in its collection, apart from a few narrow exceptions. So instead, the museum has floated the idea of loans, lending some bronzes back to Nigeria for a while, and you can feel how that lands. You're being offered the chance to borrow, temporarily, the treasures taken from your own palace by force. A lot of Nigerians have said the obvious thing. Being asked to borrow your own stolen property isn't a solution. It's the insult with better manners. Now, in fairness, the museum makes a real point. Parliament could change the 1963 law, and this is ultimately a decision for government, not curators. That's true. It's also true that the law hasn't been changed, and there's no serious sign it's about to be. And there's one more part of this that deserves to be told honestly, because it's real, and because it often gets misused. Even within Nigeria, there's a genuine debate about who should receive the bronzes when they come home. On one side, the Nigerian state, which sees them as national heritage, belonging to all Nigerians. On the other, the Royal Court of Benin, the Oba, whose ancestors commissioned these works and from whose palace they were physically ripped. In 2023, Nigeria's outgoing president declared the Oba the rightful owner, which reopened that argument. It's a real question, and thoughtful people land on different sides of it. But watch how it gets used. Because, well, who would we even give them to has become a very convenient reason for the big holdouts to do nothing at all. And that's a hard one to accept, coming from institutions that felt no such doubt about who owned the bronzes for the 125 years they kept them. So here's where we land. The Benin Bronzes aren't just beautiful objects, they're the memory of a people, a kingdom's own record of itself, in metal reaching back 5 centuries. They were taken in a single act of fire and force, and then used to disprove the very lie that was told to justify taking them. And for more than 100 years, the people they belonged to asked for them back and were told no. That is finally changing. One by one, they're going home. And the last great holdout is a single museum in London, holding 900 of them, behind a law from 1963, offering to lend a nation its own history back. Anyone can walk in and stand in front of them for free. Depending on how you look at it, that's either a wonderful privilege or the whole problem, standing in one room. If you want the real history behind the headlines, the stories underneath the objects, this channel is where I dig it up. There's another video on screen to carry straight on. I'll see you there.